This is the Constructionist podcast, where we take ancient stories, the person of Jesus, current events and topics, and help you construct a new Christian worldview that's relevant and loving to those around you. I'm your host, Kevin Bates. I'm a semiotician and community builder, looking at the signs of the times to build a better future together. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin, and this is the Constructionist podcast. And tonight we are just taking a little break from our continued series, and we are talking about the election tonight and just the results of the election, where we are at as a country. And honestly, has been a lot of, on one side, celebration, and the other side, a lot of sadness, fear, and honestly, someone's not joining tonight because of tears. And so we are working towards just how to come to grips with where we are at as a country and where we are at as people, and how to just advance forward and reconcile. Maybe you fell into the camp that's sadness tonight, and you're trying to reconcile what has happened. So what we want to do is we want to just provide a space to talk and a space to just come to some conclusions. Something I wasn't aware of is some of the hate that's been going around on the internet about women, about LGBTQ plus, about
since the election.
Election.
Yeah.
Yes, election triggered hate. And it's quite disappointing, to be honest. And our normal guest, Sharia, just chose, I just don't need to be here tonight. And we honor that. And we love you, Sharia, for that. And we are supportive of you in that decision. And so in the brief moment that I had that I learned about certain things, I did a little deep dive and I found out, wow, there is quite a bit of hate. So here at the Constructionists, we do not promote, tolerate, or want to promote any kind of hate rhetoric. Our mission here is to promote love. Our mission here is to promote love your neighbor. And if something doesn't align with that, then we are going to denounce that and not make that a part of our rhetorical goals. And so honestly, we just need to take this space to just sift through some things. So we're going to do that tonight and give people the time and the space to do that. So our goal is not to fabricate anything. Our goal is to be honest, and our goal is to be truthful as much as we have researched. And when we don't know something, we're going to tell you to do your own homework and find it. So tonight is that same idea, giving an authentic perspective on our examination. And this is a thinking space. So if you like us, support us, go to our Patreon page, go to resonatechristian.church, find out more about who we are as a church, as a community, and you can give to our mission if you so desire. So there is a quote that, I just want to read a couple of things for you that I think are important. I grieve for those of faith who believe they have won a spiritual battle, yet remain unaware that they have lost the war against the very people they claim to love or wish to be saved. And I think that that's really important to focus on, because when you have a lot of hate in your heart and resentment towards others, and they become like your object of disdain or object of, like, I can't stand you, and you think that you have won something by, let's say, voting against them, possibly you've isolated that person even more of ever having a relationship and ever loving your neighbor or seeing that person saved. So I grieve for those of faith who believe they have won a spiritual battle, yet remain unaware that they have lost the war against the very people they claim to love or wish to be saved. It's Dave Gibbons. Um, I think that's really important to reflect on and to think about when we start othering people with our language. So, I have been a proponent and also an advocate of women's rights for a very long time. And long before, it was really a news cycle as much it is in the Christian world. I was promoting female equality long even before I was a Christian. And when I became a Christian, I thought it was very strange that in the church, women were considered unequal. And then, it was given to me, the rhetoric was, well, they're equal, but different roles. And so, honestly, I bought into that for a while and said, okay, I can deal with that. But honestly, I couldn't deal with that after a while because when you're not able to fulfill equal roles, you're really not considered equal. And so, so I think that the church honestly is continuing the same pattern that's led to its continued demise, honestly, the evangelical world, where we are still trying to answer questions the world is not asking. And I think that we are caught in that. And the world is asking, and half of the voting United States is asking evangelical church, where are you? And and honestly, I think I fall in that to where I have to ask that same question: where are we? And so I've been thinking through about why Christians have sided so deeply with a political party to the point that we've seen a resurgence of Christian nationalism. We've seen this surgence of hate and inequality and honestly hate rhetoric towards immigrants. We've seen all kinds of language being used against others. And we've like joined this movement, political movement. Go ahead, Jake. You had your hand raised.
We did a sorry, yeah, we did a series not too long ago on the religion of whiteness with
Right.
Christian nationalism, and so we explain a lot of this as well. Um, Two series back ago where we go through the religion of whiteness. So if you want any more information and coming into this right now, that's where we're at.
Right. So where was I? Just trying to answer the question now. Why have so many evangelicals joined
Mm-hmm.
a political and sided with a political party when honestly the church has historically, and especially the movement that I belonged to, the restoration movement, historically has been almost anti-political. We
Yeah,
have been so non-political and cessationist political to the point that some of our like Lipscomb and some of these like founders of the restoration like modern era or not modern era but in the last
gotcha.
100 or so years that some of these people were put in jail for like
Not paying
not
taxes. Yeah.
paying taxes and participating in regular government things. Especially like voting was never an option. Running
Mm-hmm.
for office, that's still amongst like Quaker movements and such, that is just a no-no. Like you cannot like
Marry that church and
mix
state.
marry, you
Yeah.
can't marry that closely when being a Christian and running for office. So all of a sudden now we see a joining of forces where politics and religion have intertwined so much that almost like it's it's Jesus and his voice if we vote a certain way or it just seems so closely related. So that's been baffling to me a little bit, not a little bit, a lot of it, to be honest. So when this last election cycle went down, I was really surprised. I was like, wow, okay. So I have to say, possibly I am wildly out of touch with what's going on in my own religion, where I'm watching a movement of people or a group of people, my friends and colleagues, join a movement that honestly is built on principles that I would say are not inherently Christian. So when you start talking about making a country wealthy or economics or honestly like what is seemingly a sense of greed or entitlement, that is not a mandate in the Bible. There's no mandate that I see that says we need to be the wealthiest people.
It's the exact
That
opposite usually.
Yes, it's the exact opposite. So when you start just breaking simple things down, like for example, okay, so if we are afraid of borders and like our borders are so open, but it does say there's a mandate to welcome the foreigner. So if we're closing the border, how are we going to welcome the foreigner? And that question needs to be answered because that's the mandate of the Christian faith. So you just can't scream at the border and call that Christian. But what Christians are notorious for doing is screaming at topics, right? And then doing nothing about it. Or screaming at topics and then when it's perceived to be like not a topic anymore, it could be totally broken still and not fixed. But when it's seemingly not a topic anymore, we stop talking about it.
Like picketing abortion clinics, but not being willing to adopt children.
Right. So we scream at a subject, right? But then we're not willing to participate in the subject. So we just did a forum the other weekend about refugees, and then a month ago
Mm-hmm.
about immigrants, and trying to change the narrative of immigrants. I'm having to in our church work on forums to change the narrative of immigrants in a perceived Christian setting with Christian language. Why? Because Christians have screamed at this subject
Mm-hmm.
without any seemingly Christian solutions.
Yeah.
So honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed. Long before election day, disappointed in this continued, oh, I would just say swirl of talk and no action. And it's very, very disappointing to see that
Mm-hmm.
somebody would vote thinking that the federal government is actually going to fix this. Honestly, I mean, whatever agenda or whatever topic, that dot down the list of topics that people said, I'm voting for this person because, and it could be either side. I'm voting for this person because they're going to do this. Honestly, is a fallacy because the federal government, honestly, in my lifetime in 52 years, has done a couple of things. Has raised my taxes
Mm-hmm.
consistently, and uh, honestly, and maybe built large roads and military that my family has participated in, and those things, maybe a few things like that. But the things that actually are affecting our lives happen with a coalition of people, usually across multiple organizations, with leaders that are ethical, respectable, and moral, entering into conversations, working bipartisanship agreements to be able to come to real solutions. That's honestly how things are solved, is with a plethora of voices across a whole group of organizations coming to a honest and real solution. So like immigrants or refugees, we learned that it takes about 4 or 5 organizations to work a resettlement plan for one refugee family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been that way for a very long time. Why? Because it takes work and it takes coming to real solutions and providing real needs, right? So, so if you think that you won today, um, I think that honestly, we're going to find out that we lost a lot. And I probably would say the same thing regardless, is we've lost a lot in something. Because honestly, if you believe that one candidate was the lesser of two evils, we're still voting for the evil. And that's the problem with that thinking, that if you're in that camp, that you're voting for the lesser of two evils, that's a fallacy. So, first, it's a logical fallacy, where if you find that, well, I didn't like this candidate because I heard it all over the last handful of days, asking my friends and colleagues and people that I know, and in the academic world and in the non-academic world and such. It's like, well, what do you think? Why do you think that so many Christians voted Republican down the line and such? And why are the Democrats the way that they are, and what happened with the election and such, and what's your conclusion? And basically, I was told over and over again that it's the lesser of two immorals. It's the lesser of immorality that they chose. And I'm like, wow, that's where we're at? That's kind of weird. It's less immoral to vote for this candidate or the other candidate. And so if you were against like the Democratic Party, you were afraid of things like trans affirming care, you were afraid of open borders, you were afraid of inflation, you were afraid of things like the socialism, you're afraid of things that even breathe, communism. And then if you were over on the if you were against Republican, you heard things like hate rhetoric, you heard a lot of hate noise, you heard anti rhetoric, you heard walls, you heard closed borders, deportation, you heard a lot of things that seemed very aggressive. And so people were making choices. And most of what I heard is they made the choice because it was the lesser of the two evils. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about the lesser of two evils. And is that a Christian choice? Can you be a Christian and vote the lesser of two evils? Whatever camp you sit in, right? Because that's really what I think a lot of people chose. Some people, as one of my friends said, which is true, some people is, blue no matter who, right? I mean, you are going to just go Democrat down the ticket no matter what, or you're going to go Republican down the ticket no matter what. It's because my dad did it, my grandfather did it, everyone did it in my family, so we're just going to do it, right? And that's how we vote. But I think in this election there were so many flipped states. I thought that was a conscious choice.
And flipped demographics.
Right. That was a
Especially
conscious choice.
Latinos, Native Americans, college
Right.
educated. There's a massive flip.
Right. So the problem with the lesser of two evils is the principle, actually, that language became part of kind of the political language in, honestly, probably around the 1960s, right? Where presidents were not necessarily making ethical choices. They were just figures that were making choices that some people thought were moral or less moral, and they were making the decisions based on like, okay, that just sounds a little less evil than not.
Moral wasn't a question of the state.
Right.
Ethic was, but moral was not.
Right. So when you are in the camp of choosing the lesser of two evils, that's called moral relativism. Moral relativism has never been a biblical idea. Now, I would say that, is there absolute truth? Well, that's where you have to, spend some time around that topic philosophically and try to come up with some solutions with that language. Is there absolute truth? But I do believe that there is moral absolutism. And moral absolutism would say your values, your ethics, the things that you hold as a Christian, you find that those are absolutely true and absolutely dear. Like, for example, the greatest command is to love your neighbor. We might disagree on how to do that,
Yeah.
but nobody can deny that we're to love our neighbor. and grace and forgiveness and repentance and truth and all the words that we could package around what the Bible tells us to be and to do and say, we could say those are pretty much moral absolutes that we just don't say, oh, we don't have to tell the truth anymore. Right? Honesty is not necessarily a good thing anymore. We can lie. No Christian of their right mind would start just saying that we can start telling lies and that's an okay thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you have moral absolutism when it comes to some uh, pretty important ethics and just the way that we behave as and our integrity is built off of that and such. So when you're choosing the lesser of two evils, you're actually saying, okay, I'm a moral relativist, where I'm okay with somebody lying. I'm okay with somebody stealing. I'm okay with somebody that is sexually immoral. I'm okay with that. So so honestly, we need to start rethinking that
Mm-hmm.
as Christians. Are we true to our morals or are we just going to be a moral relativist? Because moral relativism just kind of breaks down, well, and honestly, at my leadership, I believe that how you are ethically will determine the ethical choices that you make. Otherwise, you're like negotiating back and forth, with what you believe and what you know, and what you actually will put up with, and what you will actually, agree to or not agree to. This actually happened with Stalin and Hitler, and who the United States would support. So Stalin was the lesser of two evils, and that was during World War II. It was the strategy, it was the foreign policy strategy of of the Kirkpatrick doctrine, they called it, and so it was the lesser of two evils to support Stalin. The problem with that is that the principle becomes a like it becomes a logical fallacy. Because when you're choosing the lesser of two evils, you're still choosing evil. So if you're choosing the lesser of two immoral, you're choosing immorality. And that's a problem. And you have to figure that problem out. I'm not going to tell you how to figure that problem out because that's going to take the next probably 52 years of my life. But I can tell you that when you're choosing the lesser of two immorals, you're actually choosing immoral, and you have to start spending time with that. I think that I think that people in moral relativism are choosing the less of two evils or immoral are so focused on the consequence of said like election.
Can I
You're
ask you something you
focused
just
on
said,
the
Kevin?
consequence of the outcome. Yeah.
You said people that are focused on the lesser of two evils are actually immoral themselves. Is that what you just said?
I don't think so, but if I did, I'm sorry.
Go. Kind of
I'm
start over. Start over again. Go one more time. I may have misheard you.
Well, if you're choosing the lesser of two evils, you're still choosing evil. If you're choosing the lesser of two immorals, you're choosing immoral. And you have to do the hard work there because that's a logical fallacy. To think that you can do that and be okay, that's a logical fallacy. You're actually falling into a fallacy when we do that. Um, and it's because we're focused on the consequence of the election, said election. Let's just use this as an example where you
Supposed
have
consequences, right?
supposed consequence. So you're focused on, well, if I allow this person to win, then we're in this boat, right? So I don't want those consequences. So I have to vote this way because I'm, you know, it's a it's a consequence. But moral absolutism tells me that I need to live in a non-consequential decision-making paradigm. And so if I find that the two people that are in front of me that I have to choose, or the two decisions. So now just peel this back a little bit. Like don't make it so national. Make it like
Mm-hmm.
your everyday, right? I have two decisions to make. One is stealing and one is less stealing. How about let's not make the decision to steal at all, right? So in moral absolutism, right, you would say, I'm not going to live in consequence because if I choose this one, then like I won't go to jail for as long, right? How about choose a different choice? So the logical fallacy honestly also goes to I only have two choices. That's a logical fallacy as well. You always have more than two choices. You cannot participate. And that's what my movement did. We didn't participate. We abstained from voting. We abstained from participation. And our movement was small, but think about if neither candidate got the Christian vote.
Mm-hmm.
And we said no more. We're not going to do this. I mean, honestly, if you want to like speak, silence sometimes is the biggest speaker. And so that'll make people go crazy. So there's a false dilemma there with the logical fallacy that you only have two choices. You always have more than two choices. So it's also a fallacy to convince or to try to persuade that Christians are morally obligated to vote. So some families, people, they believe that it's your moral obligation to vote. And so it's not a moral obligation to participate. You don't have to participate. Now, I might get just skewed alive on the internet just because I said that. But honestly, I'm just trying to give, like, if you are celebrating today, I think that we're not looking at a clear picture. And if you're sad today, I understand why you're sad, and I want to try to clear the picture a little bit for future decisions. Because honestly, could we honestly say that these two people that we voted for maybe shouldn't have even been on the ticket? That could we have had another two that were just a little more vetted properly and on the ticket that were maybe speaking more bipartisan and universally to a broader group of people? What do you think of that, Jake?
um, your parts about moral kind of absolutism versus relativism. What's hard is when that affects other people. And so we live in Oregon. We are, if state rights are such a thing, very
Which
little
they
will,
are.
yeah, very, very little will affect us. But when we look at what's the lesser of two evils, and that's still voting for evil, there was an Anabaptist when the Turks were invading the Holy Roman Empire, and he commanded and tried to open the borders and let them in, and then have the soldiers turn their swords on the Christians rather than kill Muslims. Because what is the purpose, right? Was the purpose to defend the borders? Was it to spread the gospel? Or what is it to or was it to defend Christianity? And so that's where I kind of sit with politics as well, is that we have the option to let everybody in, because Christianity doesn't need defended. We don't need to defend the Christian values. That's within ourselves, right?
Right.
And so, like, to take that upon a candidate or a person is attributing more power to any person than is necessary. Both of the people running were just people.
Right.
And so I don't believe there's any God ordainedness behind presidency whatsoever. It just is a thing, and it takes a special person to run that type of a race. Wouldn't want to do it.
Mm-mm.
The so when you
The Bible is pretty clear that we're to abstain from evil.
abstain from evil, it also says to give to Caesar what's Caesar's, and people try to make that into some voting argument, but that's not what that
Mm,
is. And
no.
abstain even from the hint of evil, right? It's Ephesians 5, I think, right?
Right.
And so I I think even saying that a party is evil, like I don't think either side was evil. I
Well,
think
that's the language that people are
totally,
using back and forth,
yeah,
right? So just say immoral, right? So this is immoral behavior, or this is immoral behavior. We're very used to calling things
immoral being evil, right?
right, and so that's the language that was used, and the language of the adage is,
Mm-hmm.
choose the lesser of two evils. So that's where that language is incorporated in the discussion. But really, it comes down to what you thought the moral choice was.
Yeah. So who sets morals? I think it's another question, right?
Right,
Or what's the most important moral that you're going with?
right,
Like, okay, is it abortion? I think that's people chose abortion a lot. And so Kamala at the debates that she'll defend every possible bill to legalize abortion in every state,
right,
and that scared a lot of people. Um, the other side said that that's the state right, and historically, for things that he said, he is neither for or against abortion. He just pushes the states, right?
right.
He doesn't have a hard line. He just said it's a state issue. Let's leave it in the states. Supreme Court backed that up with the Dobbs decision.
Hmm.
So, what is moral? Is moral then access to healthcare? Like, is moral lifting people out of poverty, like we're called to do? Is moral looking to the outsider? So it's like moral relativism also comes into play of not just the lesser two evils, but what you believe morality is. And so I think we've heard the argument that they voted for Trump because of the gay agenda and abortion.
Hmm.
Is that it?
Well, I mean,
There
honestly,
has to be
that's,
more.
yeah, a handful of people responded to me with
Yeah.
that they voted a certain way because of those two. And those two ideas to both parties are very important and are opposite, diametrically opposite to one another in either party. So, if that's a word, I'm trying to
Yeah.
say that they're just oppositely uh, promoted. So, so they are very important issues. So to say, is that it? I understand what you're saying, but I think one of those actually for one of my peeps got lifted off of the why they voted. It was more abortion and the economy,
I mean, the
not
economy.
abortion, not abortion and trans affirming care, not abortion
Yeah.
and gay rights, not abortion. Those two subjects did not go together. It was abortion and the economy. And if you think about it, the economy was spoken a lot. I mean, that was like a big subject.
That was
And
it.
immigration. Yeah.
And people remembered Trump's economy,
Right.
right?
It
I
was,
mean, it was you inherit the economy of your predecessor.
right.
And so at that moment, he was rocking all the way to COVID. So people remember that. They remember the free checks in the mail.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
Oprah all over again. But and the other candidate was very hobbled in in the last 4 years. So your question was there anybody else? There always is somebody else, always. But we have the idea of the strong man as well.
Right.
That we have, and all over the world, they're voting strong. What they call like the strong men into office.
Right.
I believe it's Argentina that just elected a very toxic strongman. And so, as we look at this next strongman venture and all of these podcasters out there that are attacking women right now, what's the goodness that comes out of that? 55% of men voted for Trump. 53% of females voted for Harris. And so you and I are out of touch with 55% of all men and 47% of all females. Just something to think about.
Well, I wouldn't say that the people that I know that voted a certain way on either side are unintelligent, disillusional, misinformed. I would say that they chose to believe very signature cues.
You wouldn't say misinformed?
Mm, honestly, I do think that some things, like the economy, right?
Yeah.
There are some very felt hardships on
Things
the
are
economy,
expensive right now.
and things need to be corrected that way. But I think they need to be corrected in a very different way than I think that is being spoken.
Yeah.
Like, I do think that we need to go to more of a common good type of
Mm-hmm.
economy. I do believe that, honestly, the price of like gas, I mean, talk about the price of gas, you know. Why is the price of gas so expensive in black neighborhoods? I would like that question to be answered, right? Why is gas 6.50 in this neighborhood, but then right down the road it's like $4? So I have a challenge with that. And I know that there's reasons, and very sad reasons for that happening, and I would like that answered.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of economic questions that I would like answered. I'm not necessarily worried about like like certain um I am worried about certain prices for me personally, but I'm not going out and buying a new car like tomorrow. I'm not going out and like having, but some people have to, but I'm not. I'm more worried about like sustainable products and things that like I'm buying on a daily basis. I don't know if those things can change right away. I don't know if the price of eggs can change overnight, right? Not sure. I do know that the price of oil changes overnight. So can we fix that one and get it more equitably distributed amongst people? Because there's certain things that are supposedly like visibly needed.
Yeah.
I think that
I would do some
that
research on why the gas prices are so high right now.
I haven't done any research. I'm just bringing it up.
Yeah. It's
Why is it
interesting.
so high right now? Do you
I
know?
during COVID, the demand for gas went way down. And
Okay.
so Saudi Arabia was going to keep production up, which would lower the price of gas and affect ExxonMobil and like all the major gas suppliers. They'd also have to regulate their gas prices down as well. Um, the sitting president at the time negotiated them to reduce their amount of production so that the supply met the demand at the current rate of sale.
Right.
And we've not reduced it since then. It's those commodities
So
that go ahead.
go ahead.
It's
Oh,
those
I just go ahead. Sorry.
it's the commodities that get really affected.
Right. Well, I would just like to just point out, that's what we were pointing out, is the economy was spoken about a lot. And that was some of my like
Mm-hmm.
questions that I would throw out there and
Yeah.
say, why are so many Christians voting for Trump? Why are they voting for so many Republicans right now? Um, because it is a disproportionate amount.
Yeah.
Like it has changed. Um,
Huge turns.
Most of the responses were, I can't stand what they're doing, so I'm going to vote over here for change. Right? There was really no formed thoughts. It was just, and some had formed thoughts, but they were very crystallized formed thoughts of, I
Yeah.
can't stand this over here, so therefore I'm going to do this over here. Um, and that's honestly just a very calculated lesser of two evils. So I think that this person is, well, okay, so one of my family members, okay, so let's put one of my family members that I talk to on a regular basis, voted Republican down the ticket. And they said things like, this person's a liar, this person is a felon, this person is all these things. They had this laundry list of things. And they said, I don't care. I'm voting for him anyway. Because this person is a baby killer and a socialist and a communist on down that line. So that's just a very calculated, like, okay, these morals outweigh these morals, or this immorality outweighs this immorality, so therefore I'm going to choose the lesser of two immoralities. Well, you're still choosing immorality. And so the Bible has something very, very specific about that when it says in Romans 3, uh, let us do evil that good may come.
By no means.
So, so it says their condemnation is just. So honestly, I just look at that and go, well, what's the answer then? Like, what should we do? Well, number one, I think that leadership, we need to start over with leadership. If
Mm-hmm.
this is what we got at the top, we need to rethink our perception of leadership and what a real leader is. Because real leaders, yes, can persuade, yes, can convince, yes, can negotiate, yes, can do deals, yes, they can be on the world stage, they can speak and articulate vision and message and all the things that we like are sucked into fanboy, right? Wow, that person's amazing because that's what, Barack Obama was known for, his speeches. And
They were good.
everyone just got sucked into his speeches. Like, wow, this person's amazing. Couldn't tell you what any policy he wrote was, but they just loved his speeches. JFK, I read his inauguration speech. It almost had me in tears. Fanboy, right? Where I'm just like, wow, this person can write and give speeches. That's one thing they can do. But honestly, I think that leaders leaders have to. Leaders, and I'll say it this way, have to find outside themselves the answer to what is true and right. You cannot just depend on who you are, what you believe, and what you think as being what's true and right. You have to look outside of yourself for that. And whether that's a group of your peers, that you've surrounded yourself with incredible people that believe in God, or you believe in God yourself, I think that idea of moral absolutism doesn't necessarily just come from within, it comes from without too. And we really need to rethink that. It's like, if we think that a person can just depend on themselves to come up with answers and truth, that is the wrong person for the position. And that is a dangerous person for that position.
What you're speaking right now is the different type of relativism that truth exists outside of something that we can grasp. And so,
No, not necessarily.
okay,
'Cause I worded it very specifically because I believe that somebody that has lived a lot longer than me, has gone through a lot more than me, speaks probably more truth than me. And I can listen to that person very tangibly, very, what they're articulating. I can listen to that and write that down.
can they
But if I'm
speak?
just like not talking to anybody and I think in the middle of the night that something's a great idea and I just go and do it the next morning, that's a dangerous proposition, I think.
Can someone speak truth and still be wrong?
Well, according to who?
That's the question. Can someone
I
speak
think how
truth?
they do it is wrong, not necessarily that the truth is wrong.
So then the next question is like, what is truth at that point?
Well, that goes in the philosophical discussion um, about moral absolutism versus moral relativism, or absolute, more specifically, absolute truth versus relative truth.
Correct.
But that's a long discussion. But I do believe in a communal hermeneutic, an understanding of you'll honestly, there's no such thing as absolute truth
Yeah, we're talking about
because
little t truth.
right, there's no necessarily a absolute truth because nobody knows the absolute truth until we see the face of God. So so truth will always have soft edges on it of some kind. I hope I'm right, or I hope I'm wrong. But that hope or that right and wrong comes from a community of your peers, not necessarily just from yourself. Can't come from just yourself. So, this is why we work in community. This is why we work with accountability. This is why we are in check and balance. This is why hey, read this email before I hit send. Why would you even do that, right? Not just to check your grammar, just to make sure that you're saying, you know, you're actually saying what's real and what's your values. So I think that number one, leaders need to a real leader is looking for answers and truth outside of themselves. My hope is that a leader would look to God. That's my hope. At minimum, they would look outside of themselves to something. And maybe that's for someone science, or maybe that's for somebody, you know, education beyond what they have.
Their God can be
But
all sorts of things.
right. Uh, but the next kind of category is I think that leaders need to uphold righteousness. I know that leaders make mistakes, and I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to make mistakes all the time. And I'm not saying that a leader needs to be righteous, right? Because honestly, righteousness is a virtue that will have hits and misses, but a leader needs to uphold
The
righteousness,
standard of righteousness. Yeah.
right? And when you uphold a standard of righteousness, you're not loyal to necessarily a person, you're loyal to what is right. You're loyal to not necessarily the king, you're loyal to the idea. And so so upholding righteousness comes with apology, comes with forgiveness, comes with grace, comes with understanding, comes with empathy, comes with compassion, trying to understand, trying to get to the heart of the issue so that we can understand and uphold righteousness. If you don't hear apology, if you don't hear forgiveness, if you don't hear grace and compassion and empathy, if you don't hear the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy,
Peace.
peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control, if you don't hear those things, then
Back
then
away.
that's yeah, that's probably not the leader um, that you need to like come alongside. But leaders must be also upholding justice. So you have righteousness, what is right, but then righteousness is carried out to justice. Are people treated fairly? And how do you correct it when it's not fair? So when you look at just, that's a if somebody is acting out in wickedness, how is that curbed? How is that corrected? Right? So a leader upholds justice. An understanding of justice requires an understanding of what it means to listen. And if a leader is not willing to listen, they can't uphold justice. Because honestly, they might want to uphold their own justice and they know exactly how to do that. But when you look at an outside person of yourself and you're looking at a person that's just there, and you're saying, well, I don't understand what they view as just in their lives. Can you tell me what's going on? Can you tell me what's happening to you? And to be a very good listener. If you're a talker and not a listener, if you just hear words, then I think that maybe you need to rethink your own leadership, but also you need to rethink uh, what justice is. So
Mm.
this whole idea of bribery, payoffs, you know, basically shutting people up. This goes on all the time in politics. This is not what God wants. This is not a just type idea.
Going back to justice,
Yeah,
a requisite of justice is mercy and humility.
yeah,
And so if you don't engage justice with mercy and humility, then you're not actually being just. You're being, what are you trying to say? Punitive?
punishing.
Yeah, punishing, punitive. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so justice requires much more than just what's right and wrong.
Right. I think that justice is required to stabilize a community. It's required. Looking at fairness and opportunity for all people definitely stabilizes a community. But then leaders, I think, need to be wise and honest.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible has very specific things to say about leaders. I've studied leadership for a long time, and wisdom and honesty are honestly things to strive towards. So honesty in our culture of misinformation, right? We need to look to honesty as a virtue. We need to start striving for honesty. When somebody says something to us, no, that's the truth. Just start asking questions. Where did that truth come from? What are you saying? Why are you saying it? Where is it? And then you boil it down to, basically, honestly, I feel like people read Cracker Jack box inserts, and that's where they get their truth from. So it's just kind of a crazy time of misinformation that I think that needs to be curbed with honesty. Humble and teachable. Those are kind of new. That's a new term. Teachable for me in the last 15 years is I never use the word teachable. But if somebody's not malleable and teachable, times change too fast not to be teachable. We need to be teachable people. So teachable and humble, but then also courageous. And I think that courageous comes in two forms. It comes in the form of I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do this for the betterment of the people, not for myself at all, but for the betterment of those around me. That goes right back to loving your neighbor. So it's being able to act but also to restrain.
Yeah.
And if you don't see somebody restraining, that's not courage. That's unrestrained.
Courage without fear is bravado.
Right. It's arrogance.
Yeah, you have to have, in order to have courage, you have to have fear. There's
Right.
there's there's no such thing as courage without fear.
Right. Right. So honestly, I never want to be in the position again in my lifetime or other lifetimes that are behind me to have to choose between the lesser of two evils. That is the
Mm-hmm.
sentiment of people that have spoken to me in the last couple of days. Just a lesser of two evils, Kevin. And I never want to be in that position. I would rather start with a leader, a group of leaders, and say these people represent morality and justice. They represent honesty and righteousness. They represent courageousness. They represent those things first. So now let's help them through the ranks of whatever we need to, so that when somebody stands up before us and says, I want to be president, that they're two viable candidates that we might not agree with, but
But we
when
can
they're
respect.
installed in
Yeah.
when they're installed in office the next day, we're not saying, holy crap, what is going to happen next? Nobody should be sitting there in fear today. And when you start reading about how women are being like ridiculed, and immigrants are being ridiculed already, I'm like, nobody should be in this position right now.
That should
We should
not be the
be,
result of winning.
and this is the United States of America. No one should have to be in the United States of America. Let's just say the citizens of the United States of America should never have to live in fear. Should never have to live in fear. And no one on our land should have to live in fear. There should always be pathways. There should always be processes. There should always be, and I'll use this word, hope given and hope restored.
And
I think
realize.
that, and what?
Realized, hope followed through with.
Realized, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we're not giving people hope, what are we giving them? So honestly, I think that that's what I am going to start praying for. That's what God kind of spoke to me today as I was listening and sorting through, I guess, some thoughts that people had written me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So what do you have to share, Jake? Anything else?
Today, I engage with somebody that I know that their parent is not a naturalized citizen, and when she was probably the very first person I thought of when the election went through.
Yeah.
Like how can we get this process all the way through? And so if you are living in fear, and I think that's fear is viable right now because we don't know. Fear comes from the unknown.
Yeah.
And so if you are living in fear, ask yourself why. And then instead of looking at yourself, look out to help other people around you. And so we're safe. We're two middle-aged white men on our MacBook Pros doing a podcast.
Right. Right.
We're totally fine for life. But there are many people tonight that do have a fear. And so as a church, how do we create safe spaces for them? And I think under any political regime, that needs to be the question: is who's the marginalized and how can we best serve them? If we voted to serve ourselves, I think that's a really dangerous game. And if you voted for the lesser of two evils, you're calling somebody evil that you're giving way too much power to. So, those are my thoughts through it all. I worked the bar the next morning after the election. It was a very somber day,
Hmm.
right? And our county is 82% blue.
Right.
And so it's a very safe conversation to have, especially when our business does have a has a history of being more progressive. Anyways, we're a coffee shop. Of course, we're going to be more progressive, right? And so
Hmm.
it was a very safe conversation to have. But like it was, I think people are just dismayed and not understanding. And I don't think that we ever will understand what happened. And that's okay.
That's not okay.
That we
I
never
would
don't.
like to. I would like to understand.
But if we don't, is that okay?
I mean, all we can do is hope for a better future. That
I mean, I
when
can
we
give you
start,
stabs at why. Like Trump campaigned for 6 years. Kamala
right,
campaigned for 6 months. Okay, that's an easy one, right?
right, right.
And so like there's all
What
these
I
reasons.
what I don't understand is I don't use terms like a liberal elitist. I don't use terms like that.
Yeah.
I don't use terms like woke.
Well, you shouldn't because
I,
that's only for
I know why I shouldn't, but lots of people do.
yeah.
Just as like now normal language. I don't use it. Just like I don't say that, people have their head in the sand. I don't say that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say, well, you're just a stupid whatever, right? The language of just dehumanizing people really has defined our culture lately, where you can just get on the internet and on some social media channel and you can literally dehumanize and just rail on people. I just don't think that that's not our way. That's not modern life. It is modern life, but it doesn't need to be modern life.
It shouldn't
Like,
it shouldn't be, but it's definitely our way.
and I think that it's just shaped us so deeply that it's okay to just, call somebody a name or just downplay them because they have a certain idea or belief. How about
Our way
just
of
ask them, or way of life? How about just ask them why they believe that
mm-hmm.
way?
Ask questions, not give propositions. Yeah.
Yes. So here's my apology. I'm really sorry today if anyone's listening to this. I'm really, really sorry if today you feel afraid. I wish that I would have started sounding an alarm 5, 10 years ago, louder. I wish that I would have been involved more, and I'm sorry I wasn't. I am really sorry that if you are in fear today, if you received like a text that told you to report to a plantation today, I'm really sorry that you received those artificial intelligence generated texts today because that really kind of sucks. I'm really sorry if you've received like hate texts today because I know people are. And I know that's real. And I know that that is just harassment. I'm sorry if you're in like school still and you're going to your school and it's just full of rhetoric and hate and name calling and all this stuff like my daughters are going through. So I'm really sorry that you're experiencing that. I don't know what to do about it besides get involved to start to bring about change. And I hope that, and I would encourage everybody that's listening, if you've listened to this, that you would get involved and bring about change. Because I do not think that we need to be in this position anymore. We don't need to be shaping our culture with hate or anger. We need to be shaping our culture with love and peace and the fruit of the Spirit. I have heard very little fruit of the Spirit lately. Very little coming from news cycles and media, but also citizen media. I've heard very little care and love coming through. And that saddens me, and I'm sorry that we're in this place. So
Because
I would encourage us
if the Christians did win, the kingdom of God should be coming right now.
that what?
If Christians did win, the kingdom of God should be coming right now.
Right, Jesus is on his way back.
No, not that, but like love, joy, peace, just
Oh, yeah, yeah.
jubilation, freedom. That's not
Mhm.
what's happening.
No. Yeah. So I think that it's just time to continue the work of reconciliation, to bring kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. That love and the fruit of the Spirit would be seen more than anything else. That hate would be uh, just a a that would be the evil. That we would look at hate and say that is just wrong. That nobody needs to be. If it has flesh and blood, it is not our enemy. And I would encourage you to hold on to that tonight and in the next years to come. So, with that, Jake, do you have any other thoughts?
We're good. I have lots of
All right.
thoughts, but it's okay.
I know, we do. All right, with that, good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.